Thank you. As you know, I've been pretty active in council meetings for quite a few years, but a few months ago I decided to take a break. Sometimes it's good to back up and chill out. But then this issue came in front of us, and I did happen to watch the last meeting you had, and the two young gentlemen who presented to council on a very serious topic for the world and our community. And before I go too far, I want to just say that I just felt like we were in a really bad place. I don't think if we just sit around like we are right now, and we just talk about our community and do nothing, it's not going to be pretty. It's just not good enough to do nothing. And hopefully I won't sound too disrespectful, but you people were elected to represent us. And this is the most serious issue that's ever confronted this community. It's not enough to do nothing. And you can do a lot. Now, because when I sit and look at this whole COVID thing, 18 months now, where are we going? Is there a solution on the horizon? No. What's happening? It's getting worse. The people who are getting jabbed, and I'm not going to get into science much, but you all know me. I do my homework. I've been poring over this since they first talked about the bug. If they issued a degree for ordinary people to get one, I'd probably get one. This is not going well. The people presently who are getting jabbed have been jabbed twice and looking forward to getting a third one and potentially the fourth. It's not going to be pretty. They're the ones presently, the evidence, who are getting sick and shedding. Do you think it's going to be prettier with another jab? I don't think so. I think the way it's going is the same way it went for chickens. You know the story about the chickens. They can't keep them alive unless they keep them vaccinated. That's in someplace, I forget where it is. That's a fact. That's the way I see it is going for everybody who's willing to take the jabs. I hope it doesn't happen. Hope I'm wrong. Doesn't look good. But what I want to say is, I decided to write the letter. It's quite simple. And it comes from what I just expressed to you. We're in a really bad place. Nobody in Victoria or Vancouver, Bonnery Henry, and the rest of the dopes that surround her, that's what they are, dopes. Because all they do is insult the people every day. And if anybody thinks that's going to end up in a good place, it's not. If anybody thinks that we're going to continue to fire citizens, let's just talk about this community. And people lose their livelihoods and can't provide for their families, and they think that's going to end up well. Well, I'll tell you, if I was one of those people, losing my job for the crimes that are being committed, and I'll go back a little bit. Acting Mayor, you're correct. The Constitution lays out all our rights and freedoms that we're all entitled to. But there's a but clause. But what that but clause says is you can't violate those rights that are guaranteed by breaking the law. You can't do that. That's what we're doing. Forcing people to take the jab is assault. It's a crime in Canada. That will come out. There's a big case it's in Vancouver right now. It's in the court. But we can't wait for the law courts to deal with this issue. We have to deal with it. And that's what my letter is all about. I'm begging you guys. This whole thing is a disaster. Just ask yourself, is anybody in here willing to stand up and say, we're advancing a solution to this COVID thing? Anybody? Nobody's got an answer to that because we're not advancing. We're going to go backwards big time. And you know, I hate to be one of those guys you might call a conspiracy theorist, but I don't want to be one of the 20%. I wouldn't want to be one of the 20% who may be still alive a year from now, with the 80% maybe dead or totally disabled. I don't want to be there. And none of us have an answer to where we're going to end up. But as we're going on right now, it doesn't look good. So what I'm suggesting in my letter is fully within the power of this council. And it would be most dishonorable if you guys did nothing. And that is, ask the Attorney General to ensure that his officials are following the law, because they're not. We can forget all the arguments about whether the masks are legal or whether getting a jab. It's assault. The very first crime, it's assault under the Criminal Code of Canada. Pure and simple. And nobody gets to use that to say, but we can assault you if we want to, because there's a but clause in the Constitution. That's total BS. It's a crime. And it will come out. Anyway, back to where I should go so I can end. Thanks for your patience. So what I put together here was how we can move along with it. And what kind of inspired me to write the letter, it's kind of strange, on my dining room table at home. Since I've been retired, I've been doing some genealogy. And my wife happens to be descended from 5 family names from the Mayflower. Pretty significant. And I couldn't help but think of what they did. They ended up having to go back to England twice before they could head to North America, land in North America in the middle of November. Bad time to be landing on a different continent. And there was all the religious people, the Puritans, or the Pilgrims. And there was all the other people they called others. And they realized they didn't get along. So what did they do? They wrote up what's called the American Compact. That document was used as a foundational document for the Constitution of the United States. And I thought about that. That's something we can do. That our city council can be the first to write a document like that to our government and maybe move the goalposts on this whole issue. So that's why I wrote my letter, inspired by that. And all it does is, you would send a letter to Attorney General and say, look, we want you to double check. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he was doing his job in the first place. We want you to double check and make sure your officials are following the law. And aside from that, where's the hurt? And the Attorney General encouraging Cabinet to get together with the experts that are listed in this document. It's a great document. It's one of many that's out there. But it's at least confrontational, not the one I could find. A lot brighter people named in this document that are running the show in Victoria and Vancouver, that's for sure. Because right now, we're on a downhill. It's like being on the top of Mount Everest with a pair of skis and shoving off. It's not going to go well. You're going to be going 1,000 miles an hour when you get to the bottom. And you're going to have a big crash. So I would hope that council would have the courage, like the Pilgrims have, put together a compact, send it down to Attorney General, say, please review whether or not these guys have been doing a legal job. But the most important thing is, all that stuff that can be settled down the road, the legal stuff, and it will be for a long time. But how do we move ahead as a community? We got to move ahead. The way it's going right now, it's going nowhere. It's going to be really bad. I think we're going to have some violence in our community. You can't keep firing people and expect it to be sunny the next morning. I have a little bit of, I hope Well, you could just give me one more minute here. Pass on a little personal
Give you
experience.
one more minute.
Okay, thanks.
10 minutes.
Thanks. In 1957, my family came out from Canada to here. And we were living in a little house in the Washington Wild. Dad had a job in the
Where did you
village.
come from?
Dundee, Scotland.
Not Canada.
To Canada, yeah. We were supposed to end up in Kitimat, but Chuck Wilcox met my dad and Frank Gardner, and now small down in Vancouver, and convinced them to come to Colorado. They were building a new paper machine and raising the dam and all kinds of things here. So the dad ended up here. And then 2 months later, the mill went on strike, the big strike in October of '57. But as someone who hadn't quite turned 10 yet, you remember the stress in the house. No income. What do we do? Mom saying, go to welfare, do something. And Dad being the way they all were back then. I'm not asking anybody for anything. Well, I forget why I got on to that. Well, it had to do with the jobs, people losing their jobs. We've got to become personally more emotional about our friends and neighbors losing their jobs. It's not right. We've got to be more. So anyway, I would encourage you to write the letter and ask them to meet with these people. These people are saying, look, the road you're on is the wrong road. Things are not getting better. These are the experts who talk about prophylactic treatment. Treatment before you get the bug. So the bug shows up, you'll be in pretty good shape to deal with it. We just heard from Michelle. What did the provincial government do on October 1st? Bonnie Henry got together with the doctors' union. The doctors probably had nothing to say about it. The nurses' union, the pharmacists, and said, thou shalt not use ivermectin. You must not recommend it, or you're in trouble. You must not. You know the other thing they did? If you go to CDC's website today, they've got a recommendation there that you cannot, doctors cannot recommend using vitamin D or C in the treatment of COVID-19. Can you imagine you can't take a body tablet, a vitamin tablet? These guys have gone mad. All to do what? You know what it is? They've got an emergency authorized vaccine. If you come up with something that looks like it's a bit of solution, they withdraw the emergency use authorization. And the pharma companies won't make the trillions of dollars. The whole thing's corrupt. So I ask that council do the right thing. Send a letter off to the Attorney General. Ask them to communicate with these people. Do they have a better idea how to manage this thing? Because right now, we're going nowhere. It's not going to turn out well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council, we have a motion to receive and file has been tabled. Councilor Phillips, what would you like to do?
I'd like to move that we ask staff to look at Mr. Orchiston's request and see if there isn't some expression we can make to the provincial government, at least to express our observation of the distress going on in our own community, if not exactly what he's asking for, and have that brought back to us at a subsequent meeting, please.
Making a motion, can you make a shorter one?
To the chair, we saw the interpretation that's already on the floor. I just want to deal with that first. Simply
Motion on the floor.
to receive
Table.
the motion to table has been completed. Then it was Mr. Orchiston's presentation. That's been completed. So now the motion that is on the floor at the moment is to actually decide whether or not to receive. And I suggest we consider the receipt and then move on to the next item that you can discuss.
Well, I think the motion that was on the floor to receive and file the letter was table. And it has not yet been lifted from the table.
That's true, so do you want to lift it from the table to finish it, or?
That's what I had asked council. I asked council if council wished to lift it from the table. Councilor Soska has said he wants to make a different motion. Councilor Soska.
I'll withdraw that one and move that we go with the original motion to receive and file a letter. Then I'd like to make another motion, please.
As a seconder to lift from the table. Councilor Elliott. All those in favor of lifting the motion from the table? That's carried. Now we are at the motion which was to receive and file. Councilor Hammond.
Okay, so I would like to just expand on or speak to that motion in that, I would like to receive the correspondence and, there's some very serious stuff in there and I find it very concerning. What I would like to do, is simply, I don't want to tell provincial government how to do their job, but one would expect that they would respond to this kind of correspondence. I'd just simply like to write to the Attorney General, so we received a copy of this correspondence, and we'd like to see a copy of their reply. So that we're kept in the loop, and, I don't know how soon that would happen, but my motion would be that we have received a copy of the correspondence, and we'd like to see a, copy of their response.
Anyone else? So the motion that's on the floor is to receive and file. Don't see any other hands up, so all those in favor of the motion to receive?
We did that already. I'll ask the clerk, please, from the chair. I thought we did that, and now we were doing a second motion.
We lifted it from the table, opened it for discussion. Councilor Hathaway has participated in the discussion. Looking for anybody else who wants to participate on the discussion and receiving. Councilor Hathaway just commented on something else she would also like to do. But unless someone has something to say in the way of debate, whether or not we should receive the letter, I'm going to call the vote. Councilor Wong.
Sorry, Chair, you're confusing the heck out of me. Not sure where we sit right now. I'd like to hear from the corporate officer in that regard.
Okay. Corporate officer, where are we right now?
Through the chair, exactly as you described it, we are at, what is on the floor right now? It's a motion that the letter dated October 24th from Mr. George Orchiston regarding provincial government response to COVID, he received for information. That is what we make the decision on right now.
All those in favor? Any opposed? And I can't see Councilor Leishman on the screen. Does staff know if Councilor Leishman is on the meeting or available?
She's at the meeting, Chair.
Yeah, I'm still here, Chair.
So are you in favor of the motion?
Yeah.
Okay. I also am in favor, so that's unanimous. You have something else you wanted to do, Councilor Hathaway?
Well, the motion kind of got changed. It was initially note and file, which is a different thing. That means do nothing, in my view. Now it's received for information. So we've received it for information. So I'll go back to my original, what I said before. I would like to, at a minimum, send a letter to the Attorney General saying we received this correspondence and we'd like to see a copy of the reply.
Second here for that.
Second
Any discussion?
discussion. So, Councilor Hathaway, are you saying you would like to send this letter to Minister TV and say, read this letter and give our council a reply to this letter? Is that what you're asking?
My understanding was that this correspondence or information had gone to the Attorney General. Am I wrong on that?
You've already sent it?
No, I haven't sent my cover letter, just those two attached letters.
Right.
previously went to the Attorney General.
Right, so that's what I would like to see their response on. Not George's letter, but the attached.
The one, this letter he wants us to send. The letter he wants us to send. Right?
That's not what I heard Councillor Hathaway say. Councillor Hathaway, can you clearly explain exactly what your motion is?
Well, there's the correspondence from Culture Guard to David Eby and John Morgan, Adrian Dix, and Bonnie Henry. And I would like to get a copy of their response to that correspondence, if any. Because there are some very serious, points made in this correspondence. I don't know if they ever actually will respond to this correspondence, but certainly if they do, I would like to see what they have to say. Does that make it clear? Or it's just the correspondence that was sent to the provincial government. I would like us to receive a copy of this.
Okay. You understand that, Robert, now?
I believe it, I'm making some notes right now, so I can read it back to you.
Councillor Sutherland, do you have something to say?
Thank you, Chair. To go back to what I suggested while we were in process with the other motion, I'd like that to be accompanied by a covering letter, if it would please us, that at least somehow expresses our concern for the concern of our community. That we see this and it concerns us.
Anyone else? Councillor Blunt?
Yes, Mr. Chair, so just to clarify where we're at with both of these motions now. One is asking for clarification from the government in regards to the correspondence that has already been sent in to the provincial government. Fair enough, we'll be educated, hopefully we get some response. But secondly, Councillor Southcott, you are suggesting that we take the information that we've been given, we have staff take a look at it, and craft some type of correspondence to back up what we've received and send it on to the government. In terms of the concerns raised by our citizens in Palo Verde, in regards to the welfare of our community. Correct?
Yes.
Yes, so, as a comment.
Two separate areas.
To keep track of where we are. We have a motion by Councillor Hathaway. We sent a part of Mr. Orchiston's letter to the provincial government. Tell them you're
Not
shaking
Mr.
your head.
Orchiston's letter, the letter from, I just want to keep it simple, from Culture Guard. We received a copy of that letter. We send a note to the government, because if we send to them, we'd like a copy of their response.
I'm just trying to articulate what your motion was, and the corporate officer has something he can read so we can all understand what it is.
Sure, I'll take a shot at this. So the motion is to direct staff to write a letter to the Attorney General requesting a copy of their response to the letter dated October 1st, 2021 from Harry Simpson, ED of the Cultural Card.
Is that your motion, Councillor Hathaway? Is that what you seconded? Great. So that is a motion that has been moved and seconded. Councillor Southcott is talking about a possible amendment or a possible additional motion. I don't think it's been made yet, as part of Councillor Southcott's contribution to the debate. Councillor Southcott.
Can I please withdraw that? I do not want to complicate this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That does make life simple. Any discussion on Councillor Hathaway's motion? Councillor Elliott.
I don't see the harm in including the fact that we've had two delegations on the topic. And it is a real big concern to us here in this community, particularly the effects on livelihood. And respectfully ask for the correspondence that would be forthcoming from the province to those letters. I don't mean to be complicated, but as a covering letter asking for the correspondence, it doesn't hurt to say we have these delegations and visit the concern. So, and it isn't an additional letter, it's part and parcel of the act.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Fong.
Just to be, I'm going to back up my colleague, Councillor Elliott here, and just say I would like to vote on the motion on the floor, pass that, and then revisit Councillor Sullivan's motion for further correspondence to go forward.
He
He
withdrew.
withdrew.
He withdrew.
Okay, well, maybe Councillor Elliott wants to put one on the floor after. But I'd like to vote on this one, you know.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to say about the motion that's on the floor? All those in favor? Councillor Leishman, you in favor?
Opposed, Chair.
The motion carries. Looking around, the next item on the agenda.
Sorry, to the chair. I'd like to revisit comments made by Councillor Elliott in regards to sending something forward in regards to this correspondence to the provincial government from Powell River.
If someone has a motion, I suggest
Well,
that they make it.
as somebody previously made a motion.
Councillor Silka.
Thank you. At the risk of being completely waffle on this, I would like to reintroduce my suggestion or my motion that we cover this whole letter, perhaps more according to the wording that Councillor Elliott offered, that 2 successive meetings with delegations concern us, or to represent the concern we are observing in our community over this issue.
Anybody else?
I will second that motion.
I don't see any other hands up. I just have a concern myself that we're asking staff to encapsulate a great deal of diverse discussion from delegations, from speakers, from the odds and ends of bits of things that council has said tonight, and asking them to come up with a letter saying what this council thinks to the provincial government. I'm actually against this motion. I think by passing the previous motion, we're taking the correspondence the council has received and giving that to the provincial government and saying, let us know how you respond to that, so the council will be aware. And I think we're doing enough. Having done that, so I'm going to be against this motion. Anyone else? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I think the observation that people's livelihoods are being impacted and that it's having a huge impact on the cohesiveness of our community is valid, and I am very concerned about that. I've studied constitutional issues with respect to Indigenous peoples for a long, long time, and we are still tied up in court with the things we've done in the past to Indigenous peoples and the lack of compensation are forthcoming. So, yes, you can infringe constitutional rights. Usually, it comes with a proper assessment and compensation and then that. So, there is a problem. I see it, I am worried. So to say I'm not would be wrong. I want to stop COVID, I want to do the right thing like everybody else does. Do I think people should be losing their professions and livelihoods? I don't know. And if so, is there an appropriate way to make sure that they're compensated and not hung out to dry? I don't see that as part of the part and parcel of the package. I'm worried about it. So I would like our letter to say, we've had 2 delegations from our community. There's people in our community that are hurting. And we would like to see the response the province has to these 2 pieces of correspondence. And
floor. I think it was said previously in this room by one of the delegates that to sit here and see a lot of people concerned and people losing their jobs in our community and sit here and he seemed to be doing nothing other than having them send correspondence in. It's time the city backed up the correspondence with their own in support. I think that's what we should be doing.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, well, here we are pussyfooting around, that's what we're doing, we're pussyfooting around. I contacted my ally, and I got a tongue lashing from my ally. Quite a severe one. If anybody knows me, I took it laying down. Right? No, I did not. And it was over the issue of all I asked, and I got into a conversation with a good colleague of mine saying, you know, that at the last meeting, how I acted, and you know, where do you stand, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I made one promise, and that was that I would look into, could folks that have possibly been discriminated against, or not, depending on which side of the fence you're on, that's why this is so bad. Family against family, friend against friend, community against community. If we had a smoking section and a non-smoking section, so the people that are not vaccinated or don't have a passport, I know people that are vaccinated don't have a passport, because constitutionally don't think they should have to have a passport, but they got back, I mean, it's all over the map. And so I called my association, and they said they made that pitch and were blown out of the water by government. They didn't want to have anything to do with it, and the reason was they're using restaurants to punish the people. And that's what he told me. It's a punishment to make the people get vaccinated if they want to enjoy going out for dinner. So my industry is being used as a tool in a pawn. Okay. Now, but if they did say yes, and I did say, okay, I've got a vaccinated and non-vaccinated, I've got 85% of the population who's vaccinated and say, well, I don't want to go to the shingle mill. They're letting them other buggers in there, and non-vaccinated, and I don't want to be going to pee beside them or walk by them in your restaurant. So now I'm going to get boycotted by 85% versus 15%. So this all came out of two conversations, one with my association and one with a very good colleague that I respect a lot. Now we come to this conversation here today. And we're trying to hang our hat because it's easy on job loss. But that's just part of this conversation. But it's the easy part, right? We can write and say, oh, you know, we don't like the fact that our friends are losing their jobs. Well, if you watch the news this morning, Eddie or whatever minister, Evie, is he the minister? No, who's the minister? No, who's the minister of health? Adrian Dix. Is saying that these 1,700 doctors and pharmacists and nurses and like this lady here, professional people that works on my friend's children, they shouldn't be in the business anyways. He said that this morning. They shouldn't be health professionals. So really, this is a bag of soup. There's nothing you can do about this one. It's going to end up not well, just the way Mr. Orchiston said. So we can write a letter and we can say, we're going to take the easy route and just say, hey, we're not happy that our friends are losing their jobs. And are you going to really talk about what the issue is? So, you know, I don't see what's the point of voting for any of this crap, quite frankly. It's just a real big poop show. And it's terrible. And it's putting our people against our people. It's putting our families against our families. And if you say something wrong, all the people on the internet go out and say, yeah, he's son of a bitch anyway. He doesn't believe in science. He doesn't believe in, you know, our health. And then you talk to somebody who's not vaccinated and they have their reasons. And you say, well, I think it's unconstitutional. Then you're an ass for saying that. You can't win in this one. I really don't know what the answer is. And if we write these letters, they're not going to do crap for us or for you folks. They're not going to do anything. There's a big, somebody said it today, somebody way up here is doing something different. Somebody up here has a different view on us. I don't know who they are, but but they're creating a massive world upset. And it's happened. The whole world shut down. Can you believe it? You know? I have a friend that took that terrible drug. He got COVID really bad. He took that, whatever it's called, that they don't want nobody to take it. 3 days, he was better. But you're not allowed to take it. Now you're not allowed to take vitamin C for this. I mean, it's craziness. I don't think I'm going to vote in favor of anything. I'm just going to say it's all BS. Thank you. All your votes.
Councilor Fong.
No.
No, I didn't have my
Okay,
hand.
all I'm doing is I'm asking everybody around the table
Oh, bullshit.
to treat everybody else around the table with respect. I don't find laughing at someone else's comments respectful, so I'm asking you to not do that. I don't see any other hands up, but I want to say where I'm at right now. I explained to the first delegation my view on public health orders and the provincial government's activities and whether I think they're legal and appropriate or not. I voted in favor of receiving Mr. Orchiston's letter for information, and having read it and looked at it and thought about it, I voted in favor of doing that. And I didn't vote against, and as chair, I assented to the motion that we ask the provincial government to tell us about the answer that they sent back to the questions that were asked. And we voted on that, and it passed.
Passed.
And now we are voting on adding an additional letter to that. And I've heard at least 3 people say different things about what the letter should include. I am not comfortable with voting in favor of that because I don't know what that letter will say. I don't know exactly what it will be for, what it will be for and against. So I won't be voting in favor of it. Someone had presented a letter that I agreed with, I might. But I don't see one, and I'm not going to vote in favor of a motion that I don't know what it means. And vote to send a letter that I haven't seen. That's my position. Anyone else wish to enter the debate, and we'll have a vote.
And through the chair, there is a motion on the floor at this time, and maybe the clerk can read it out so everybody gets back to what it is we're talking about.
That was my next goal, to ask the clerk to, the corporate officer to read the motion that's on the floor.
So what I have reported is that to direct staff to include a cover letter advising that council has received 2 delegations from community members expressing hurt and divisions resulting from provincial housing shenanigans and orders.
That's the motion.
That is the motion as I understand it. I'm looking to see it.
Okay, I've got 2 hands. Councilor Elliott.
I believe, to be clear, that it wasn't an additional letter, but that we would have some wording in the existing approved letter asking for correspondence that would be returned to the people who wrote those 2 letters that went to the Attorney General. And, you know, in that letter, it would include some wording saying exactly what it said.
I think the corporate officer has read the motion that's in front of us just now. That was the motion. That was the entire motion. Nothing else in the motion. Unless someone makes an amendment or makes a addition. Am I correct on that, corporate officer?
Yes, Chair, and I'm being very careful to use the wording because I know this is very difficult. And what I heard was preparing a cover letter, not included within the letter. So normally I would have a bit of license to interpret before writing this, but I do not at this moment.
Everybody understand the letter? Councilor Fong, you have your hand up.
Yeah, first of all, Councilor Chair Doug, I was showing no disrespect with my laughter, but I have not in 13 years seen the mayor quite throw his hands up in the air on any particular issue. I found it funny that he is in such a confused state that that letter can come back to this chamber for us to send off to the government with everybody either for or against doing so. I don't see any problem with it. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? I can't see Councilor Alicia, so I'm assuming that she would say something if she wanted to speak.